contact event, again, occurs a year and a half later, and happens on the side of the road while coming home from my girlfriend's house. Contact event number 3, Walnut Grove, October 1996, and I was 19 years old. So I lived in Coquitlam up here, and she lived in Walnut Grove out in Langley. And I took a, 10 o'clock at night kind of thing. I would take 96 Ave up. And at the time, they've actually changed the structure of the city has changed how you get onto the highway. But at the time, you actually took this road up and it linked to this loop here. So I would come down this road here, and on the side, and there was a forest all here. This development wasn't here at the time. So I was driving home from Samantha's one night between 9 and 11 p.m., tired from the workday, heading toward 96 Ave, which ran parallel to the Trans-Canada Highway, just before the on-ramp for a couple of kilometers along the road. There was a dense forest on the opposite side. Immediately, as the road curved and ran next to the highway, my memory returned, and I became the me that knows them. I didn't experience the intense rush of energy as before, possibly because they knew I was driving. It was as if I suddenly remembered an old friend. The memories were fresh, including the agreement with the beings, and I felt incredibly excited. So I now know for certain this contact event is outside time. And yes, my car is on and driving down the road. There is a craft in the vicinity that I'll go into that I don't see here, but I can only assume is creating a localized bubble outside of time. And again, I have this idea in my head that the craft is all God. It's like a God craft. So then it actually can freeze time, but then it's the one that can choose what's not in time. So it can make the whole entire car outside of time, or sorry, outside of time as well. So the car is outside of time, and I'm convinced it's driving. I don't have a way of knowing anything else. My car is driving outside of time. And I'm assuming the craft is the one that can, as an intelligence, that can make that occur. So I deduce I'm outside of time from several factors. No memory of any traffic along the highway right beside me. When I got out of the car, I left it unlocked on the side of the road. This is something me and my regressionist explored in the sessions, which is relevant now to mention. Similar state to the first contact event. But most of all, I know that this is outside of time from the state I'm in now has a similar feel to the first contact event. I would define this state here as definitely outside my 19-year-old mind, like breaking my mind, and definitely is linked to the intuitive unified field. I didn't experience the intense rush of energy as before, possibly because they knew I was driving. So now I understand why I didn't experience that intense rush as I did in the second contact event. The ethereal mind, taking on the qualities of the 19-year-old brain, is depressed with the struggles of my life at that time. Because I'm not accustomed at that time to searching for my soul, the ethereal mind of the 19-year-old still doesn't know this energy or can't access it in his daily life. Not that my 17-year-old self was, but I was in an open mind frame at the time. So I wasn't depressed about life. In fact, I was at the end of high school and I felt life was kind of on the up and up. And I was kind of exploring. I was doing some exploration into spirituality or some exploration into myself. No, I wasn't of the state to handle any of that energy of the second contact event. But nonetheless, I'm not in this state and I'm depressed here. I'm actually in a repressed and depressed state. The bottom line is you can't hold God, the unified field, when you have fear in your mind. And that's what's happening here. I'm acting out of fear because I don't want to break up with my girlfriend. And I think there's all these repercussions that go along with it. And since this is a timelessness state is induced in me, the unified field is there in sensation. So I can feel now, after all these years and meditating on these differences, I can feel that there was a unified field state here, but not in a grand consciousness format as it's repressed by my teenage mind. But this outside mind state answers why I'm so compliant in the moment. I'm in a state of shock, awe, and unclarity about myself, and let them take control. I don't really remember the second contact. So when I start analyzing the state I was in and how much do I remember about the other contact events, fascinatingly enough, I don't really remember the second contact event here. I don't think, oh, hey, the little guy I just met last time. Like I actually don't think about him. And it's because it's in another part of my memory. So it is confusing how to access some of these memories in the moment. But the first contact event, things like the holographic timeline are more available, those ideas. Though I'm certain I don't have any specifics in my head, everything is there as a strong impression, the agreement and everything about it. So, lastly, in my present memory recall of the first and second contact events, they are very pronounced. So, sorry to back up here. The first and second contact events in my recall of them, doing all this work of my present recall of them, they're much more pronounced. The memories are actually a lot more clearer. Yet here in the third contact event, the memory is lighter, like thinner, as if it is a thinner reality. And I'm convinced because God and the source energy are more pronounced in the first and second contact events for me in those moments, that helps make the memories clearer. But my 19-year-old mind, not able to gain that source connection here, then the reality is thinner in my perception. Again, it's because it's all coming through from the higher self in these timelessness states. So when something is more in line with my higher self, I have the memory of it in much more clarity. And that just seems to be like a physics on my behalf. The memory is clear when I'm more aligned with the higher self in the contact event. In my first edition of my book, a detail that was a part of this moment, now I'm able to explain. I knew they were here. So when I was driving, I could sense. So once I became the me that knows them, I have these intuitions. I could sense them. I knew, never mind, of course, I'm in some altered state, but I could feel them like being here. I could feel that they were here and not just that she was here. So I could feel the elder. I think in our modern mind, we probably, those who are all of us into this field, we say, yeah, no big deal. But it's interesting for me to understand what's going on here because I wanted to kind of grasp all this. This contact event being outside of time explains the intuitions I was having. My mind unattached from my brain, yet a part of the consciousness field, can intuitively feel with more clarity. This literally would be my first visceral intuitive moment, sensing the elder. I never had such pronounced intuitions in my life at that age. But the timelessness state is a God field state, so I can sense that they are here. It was obvious to me then, as it is now in these memories, that I could feel my genetic bond with these beings. This moment is one of the clearest I have of my genetic bond with the beings. But I also now know this moment was staged, designed for me to experience that genetic bond with the tall grays. Yes, I'm outside of time, but still had a feeling of genetic bonding with the tall grays, because DNA is consciousness. After spending lots of time meditating and cross comparing sensations, it is clear to me that the genetics played a role in my spirituality with the beings. I know it sounds wild, but a part of the genetic sensation linked to the entities is God is in my DNA. Unity is in my DNA. I'm certain it's all about frequency, and the genetics, combined with the white room, amplify the connection to the entity's alternate God realm / dual soul frequency. I was taken up to the craft and taken to a room by tall grays where I was told to wait for the elder. My anticipation began to fade when I speculated that she may be intentionally keeping me waiting. I was certain she must be in the hallway, with Holding coming in. I could feel her presence on the other side of the wall, though I didn't understand what I was experiencing at the time. Presently, I'm convinced she was psychically observing me through the wall, curious as to how I was handling the sight of the creatures in the glass containers. Nevertheless, I didn't give them much attention and just waited for her. So this moment is much more significant now than I thought it was. Again, much is staged here to elicit awareness of my connection to the entities. It is important to understand that these consciousness field environments are much more exposed and fluid. So one event like this is highly impressionable into the consciousness, more so than in our everyday waking world. It's like a force is in everything, and my consciousness is a static piece in that force, allowing me to feel them. But it also makes me exposed and compliant because of my unfamiliarity with this state and environment. I'm now convinced this feeling of her through the wall is getting my mind prepped for our long term connection with my dual soul, the invisible face of the rising. It's a small impression that it, at the beginning of 1997, will contribute to a desire to subconsciously look for the elder in my everyday waking world. She then revealed herself nonchalantly. My energy raised as she triggered the elation and joy of my experience in the White Room, and my memory of spinning with her as an orb. It wasn't as intense as the last time, possibly muted by my mental exhaustion in my daily life, though it was definitely a deep energy in my heart. So the elder triggers the divine elation of the White Room and my higher self, because my teenage mind at the time, living in fear of my breakup, lack of freedom, and general depression, could not contain the power of the White Room. So it becomes projected out as a trigger by her presence. So she tells me, we are genetic manipulators, and the bodies in these tubes will have specific genetic purposes for the role each will play in our world. We also have made the human bodies for your earth, for your souls to live in, and we did this a long time ago in an ancient era, she said with a specific telepathic impression of tens of thousands of years ago. I was so absorbed with being one of theirs that I was unfazed by her comments about humanity. We make life, this is what we do, and we understand the integration of spirit with biology. We are engineers for ways of living for souls. We understand how biology manifests specific spiritual perceptions, so souls can go into those bodies when they seek those types of experiences. We are the highest type of life engineers. The energy of the thought transference got more intense as she talked about things I didn't understand. We form agreements with interdimensional beings to create bodies for nation-faring planets and dimensional lands. This is what we have done with your home world. So many interesting and valuable things are said in this dialogue, yet I don't engage, ask questions, and nor will I reflect back on this information anywhere in my contact events. And now I understand why. Largely, these are condensed telepathic impressions that bypass my ethereal mind and are retrieved into my higher self. If I was skilled at the moment, I could have translated it, but instead it's like a telepathic bubble, designed to be understood at a later time. It really does make a good summary that she is a spirit, but her brain is like a spirit dimensional computer. And she's giving me telepathic impressions, basically what we call downloads. And at the time, as a 19-year-old, I'm convinced I don't really understand. Yet all these years later, having access to the memories and my own higher self, I'm able to translate it all into phrases. I was zoomed down alone back into the forest and walked to my car excited as I recalled what happened. Having been prepared for our agreement, it was finally going to happen, and I was thrilled and committed. Just an interesting point, as I was coming back to the car, I don't have any part of my teenage mind saying, that was amazing, whoa. But instead, there is an impression of consistency. Like I'm not thinking about my own world as a teenager, but of the one that is consistent with the first contact event, like the timelessness state and frequency. It keeps my perspective consistent. So I identify with this state as the teenager who I assume would be blown away. Like it's just I'm in a different state. I'm in a state that is their state. And that's how I'm kind of framing it in the mind. But really it's this it's a timelessness state and their frequency. And so I'm that person now. And I'm not the teenager. So it's a very interesting just change up. And it's good for me or helps me understand these details to see all that. By the end, I was feeling the familiarity, bond, closeness, security, and safeness with these beings because these are in timelessness. So maybe you can now see the contact events were beginning to shape my everyday reality through layered impressions. So the third person perspective, I can only assume if someone watched this contact event from a third person perspective, they would have seen my car disappear and then instantly reappear down the road. And I don't notice it as I come to because I think I'm zoned out and almost fell asleep at the wheel. I don't want to go into detail about dreams I had at the time when there's all these rich contact events, but I'm personally fascinated by how the beings affected and influenced me at this time in my life to create the rising. So I'll just mention these briefly. There are two very pronounced dreams I had after the third contact event. One on February 19th, 1997, and the other on March 4th, 1997, both of which I discuss in the first edition of my book, but were removed in the second edition to make the book flow better. I remember these dreams for years, and they contained a deep vibration of mysticism and had me wanting more, eventually luring me down a life path which would culminate into the rising. When I discovered I had alien contact and found these dreams written in the journal, I saw right away that these were dreams about the White Room. Now that I was spiritually seeking after having broken up with my girlfriend, I assumed these must have been driven by my own subconscious, like some kind of reflection that my subconscious knew about, but my conscious mind didn't. But with this new method of discerning the memories, I took some time looking at these dreams and tried to discover their true origins, and I was stunned. For years, I thought I was the instigator of these dreams, my subconscious trying to process things. But instead, these dreams were much more orchestrated than I realized. The elder herself in telepathy, knowing I was trying to understand the origin of these dreams, said, "We opened it." All of a sudden, I put it together. There is absolutely no way my own subconscious would dream about the White Room years later like this. It didn't make any sense. But what does make sense is the elder within, as the dual soul, opened the memory, showing a tiny fraction of the White Room while I was in dream state. A small fragment is all my teenage mind would need, and I would hunt for that experience within. And it's also very timely at the top of the year 1997, when I began my spiritual exploration, which would culminate at the end of the year into the rising. It's one thing to realize the contact events made the rising, but it's another to put together that even small moments like this were not natural to my own process, but guided.